Oh, you're here twice, too.
That was over as well.
Usually when there's a play, people are tired, so
They are
they
tired.
choose one or the other. But you go, girl.
Yeah. No excuse.
No excuse.
All right. Well, we're in session 4 of this. It's talking about I feel with you, turning on your emotional radar. Let me give you a quick introduction before we go into the video part of it. Nowadays, we use radar for all kinds of things. They manage air traffic control with it. They monitor weather patterns with it. They enforce speed limits on our highways that way. And did you also know that we have something we might call emotional radar? Well, when you learn to pick up on emotional signals that your spouse or your significant other is transmitting, and you tune into them, then you're practicing the second step of trading places. Now, if you're thinking you're not good at picking up on the other person's emotions, relax. You're probably better at it than you think you are, but even if you aren't, and some people find this to be more challenging than others, we're going to give you some practical tools for drastically improving your capacity to detect the emotional signals that your spouse is sending. So, one thing that you need to keep in mind, that if you're participating, that your spouse is going to learn to do the same exact things as you. Okay? So if you're here together, then you're going to be able to practice participating and picking up on each other's emotions and practicing the radar picking up while you guys are both here together. Okay? So we're going to the video and then I'll come back.
Okay, we're halfway there. Were you thinking, who knew it would be this much work? I promise you, if you will just hang in there, it will be worth it. After all, God has blessed you with your spouse. Don't you want that relationship to be all that He intended and designed it to be? Let's hear from Les and Leslie.
I feel with you. Turning on your emotional radar. That's the topic of this session. This is skill number 2 in 3 skills that we're talking about.
The truth is, we all just process these moments when we were caught unexpectedly in a storm, and I know we've all had that moment. We need warnings for situations in life. The policeman needs a warning, like a radar to tell when a speeder is dangerously careening out of control. We need warnings for air traffic control issues so we can be safe in the air. We need warnings in life. The truth is, radars, can help us emotionally as well, because we've got to be picking up on those emotional waves that are kind of being sent. Tune into those so we can have warnings about what's going on in our spouse.
Right, you cannot get to empathy without knowing what your spouse is feeling.
Right.
Now that doesn't mean that you're a mind reader, it doesn't mean that you're a psychologist, it just means that you are attuned to what might be the emotional experience of your spouse.
Exactly, and we've already learned that our brains, our God-given capacity to do that is really built in. No, the truth is, it really just takes kind of like one of those weather radios where you have to tune into the right channel to get the warning. You've got to tune in. You've got to get focused. You've got the capacity. You just have to get focused.
You got to put your brain on the right channel to know what your spouse is feeling.
Ever wish you had a radar to help you out? Let's see what's happening with the Petries.
We have our little differences naturally, but we always made it a rule never to go to bed mad.
I think that's nice.
Pretty hard not to be mad though when you just spent the whole night in the garage.
Garage? Oh, you picked up my time to wash the car. What are you doing in the garage?
Well, I walked out. I was practically thrown out. I was just going to take a drive around and cool off, and I forgot the car keys, and I wasn't going to go back in there after. Now, why am I boring you guys with this?
Who's bored? I love to hear things that make
make me feel good about being single. Come on, boy, why don't you tell us all about it? Get it off your chest. You'll feel better.
Sure, come on. I like to feel I'm not the only guy who married a nutty woman.
Well, I came home. Well, you know what kind of day we had around here. But going home in the car, I decided I was going to leave my bad mood and all my troubles in the car. When I walked in that house, I was as charming and as pleasant as I know how to be. I was so charming, I was a regular Fred Astaire.
Sweetheart, Ginger, the old charmer's home. There she is, just as beautiful as the day I married her.
Where have you been?
Just counting the hours till I could be with you.
Well, you'd better learn to count. You know what time it is? I suppose you expect me to serve you now.
Honey, I knew you'd be tired. I grabbed a fast sandwich on the way. Oh.
You didn't want to think that I might like to eat out, did you? I'm hungry.
Honey! I love that ornament. Honey, you sit down right here, and I'm going to fix you a cheese souffle. You read the paper. Oh, sweetheart, I'm sorry. You're tired. You're overwrought.
Why, you? Me, I'm overweight.
Honey, I didn't tell you you were overweight.
Well, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you say it? Go on, how was it? What's on your mind? Tell me I'm overweight. Tell me you're sorry you ever married me.
Honey, I'm sorry.
You are. Well, I don't have to stand here and take that from you. You can just get out.
Oh, Laura, baby. Good idea. I'll bring home some ice cream.
Rob, aren't you exaggerating? Just a touch.
Well, maybe a little bit. I don't remember the words exactly, but whatever words she used sounded like those.
Yeah, and she didn't throw you out either, did she, Rob?
Well, no.
Hey, I thought so.
Yeah, but she would have loved to.
One of the problems with turning on your emotional radar is your spouse doesn't broadcast their emotions.
No, it's not always as easy to discern.
That's why you need to detect it.
Yes.
And so much of our emotion is expressed non-verbally. In fact, research shows that face-to-face communication regarding attitudes and feelings is 7% what people say, 38% how they say it, and 55% body language. Well, that means you need to be paying attention to a whole lot more than just your spouse's words if you want to detect their emotions. That's what your emotional radar is all about.
And that's what it means to focus on your spouse, to tune into that and really pick up on that wavelength.
To say, I feel with you.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Well, if you've been being faithful and coming to Fusion, you're following along in that episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and it's kind of making sense as we continue on and on. Just a couple of things before we go back into the video. I love this. I think that it's so important to understand. We've talked about it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And you can see that there's a percentage of importance on how that's handled, but even more important than that, it's the body language. And you can pick up on a lot in the way that somebody talks or somebody, what they say in the body language of how they're acting when they're saying that. You know, you can pick up a lot on that if you're paying attention. I do love that. But if you think about it, I would ask you, have you ever echoed the thought from the husband in the video clip, well, I don't remember the words exactly, but whatever the words that she used sounded like those. Why do you suppose that communication often is so difficult? This goes back to the very basic of blue and pink. We say something, and you ladies hear it a completely different way. Just the same way that you say something, and the men hear it a completely different way. You know? Are you with me? It's amazing because how many times, ladies, has your man said something, you took it a certain way, you reacted to it, and he's dumbfounded over the fact that you took offense to it or reacted the way that you did. It's like, I didn't say it that way. I didn't say that. I didn't mean it that way. And your reaction is, that's the way I heard it. Ladies, how many of you have, oh, just a few of you. If it hasn't happened to you, you're probably not paying attention because it has happened. And the thing is that, and then we as men just trip out over the fact of, you know, a man wrote a book, you know, everything that you need to understand about a woman, and it was like 400 pages long, and you open it and it's blank because we can't figure out what it is to get through to you guys. It takes a lot, and I'm not just saying because women are difficult. What I'm saying is that we are different, and being able to communicate with each other takes effort and empathy and being able to understand where the other person is coming from, because, you know, words are just words. It's the intent behind the words that make all the difference. It's what the meaning is behind the words and the body language that stands with it that makes all the difference. So that's important.
I think for us, in the way that we had to structure our marriage, because we both had examples at home, and that's what we thought a marriage should look like. So when you and I got married, we really liked each other, and then we started to spend a lot of time together. The way that I perceived how your body language was, for me, was offensive and aggressive. For you, it was passionate and you know, so because of the different cultures. So I had to make a decision that I was going to love you and accept you and appreciate who you were as a person. And now I think I've become a lot like you. I use my hands a lot. We can move back east, no problem. We fit right in. But I was not going to allow the model that was modeled to me to be the blueprint of what my marriage was going to look like. We had to find out, we had to do our marriage the way it worked for us. And we were going to make this happen for our family and start over again. I'm not saying that it's wrong, what we learned at home, but sometimes that model may not work for you, you know, unless you had a really spectacular model. But even in that case, you're married to a completely different person than your parents were.
That's true. Anybody have any comment on that or anything to add to that? Have you noticed that? That it's difficult to understand exactly. Does anybody come to the point where they follow up the statement by what exactly do you mean by that? Yeah? Because you want to make sure. And I notice that the guys are raising their hands. And I understand why. Because, you know, we're to the point where, like, okay, I don't want to screw this up. So what exactly do you mean by that? Right? So we have to ask that question so we don't step in it. Right? I know you're shaking your head no, but he's trying. I mean, he wants to understand. It's like, okay, just, you know, speak it to me so I get it. And so, and you know, if women, you're doing that, then kudos to you for having patience. The idea that so much of our communication comes from elements other than our words might be even overwhelming, but there's so much more than just words when it comes to communication. What kind of ways is there that the information can help you with your marital communication? And I'll give you an example. All couples experience difficulty in understanding each other's emotional state, so you're not alone in finding it difficult. You know, we all have a little bit of difficulty understanding the emotional state of the other person, but can that help in the way that you communicate as a couple?
Yeah.
Okay, in what way? What's that? Okay, be respectful towards each other. Do you think that the way that your spouse is feeling do you think that at some point, at some time, you may have felt as though, oh, you're making too big a deal out of it. Oh, your thought is insignificant. Oh, you're being over dramatic. Oh, yeah. I'm talking about the guys to the girls, not the girls to the guys. Or vice versa. You know, but what happens is we have a tendency to now, and the thing is this is true in everyday life, not only with your spouse but with other people. What gives you the right to minimize what the other person is feeling?
That's right.
Right? Whatever the feeling is, why would you think, oh, why are they taking it personally? Or why, maybe somebody, whatever our struggles is or are, I mean, some of us have multiple struggles, and the struggle is real, people. I mean, it really is real. We all struggle in different areas of our lives because of our past, because of our present, because of the things that have been poured into us or that have been done to us. And so, why would it be fair for someone to put something on somebody else and go, oh man, they're just, you're being so dramatic. Why are you being so dramatic? Why are you being so emotional? Why are you being so... And trying to empathize with the other person, putting yourself in their shoes, is kind of difficult because you may not know their situation. You may not know their past. You may not know their hurts. You may not know what's affecting them in the way that they are. And so when we minimize the other person's feelings, you're basically putting up bricks in the wall. Because if you don't know the way that I am, or the way that I'm feeling, or the things that have gone on in the past, and you minimize the way that I'm feeling about something, well, as Pink Floyd would say, all in all, you're just another brick in the wall. I know some of you are like, what? In other words, you're building a wall with me, or I'm building a wall with you, because how dare you try to put into perspective what I feel. You don't know me, fool. You may think you know me. You may know me, Pastor Allan, at the church, but you don't know me, all of me. I got to put on that pastor somewhat of a smile. I struggle with that. But it's not because I'm not happy. I just don't feel like smiling. I'm smiling on the inside. You just have to be inside to see it. Did you agree to say something? Okay. All right. So,
well, let me add to this. I think that you and I have learned to value and appreciate people where they're at in their walk. We have learned in time and being in the ministry that everybody has a story, and there's a reason why people have personalities and they react to certain things. And it's not up to us to judge that. If somebody is very direct, there's a reason for that. If somebody is very shy, there's a reason for that. And it's not wrong, it's just different. And I think that happens in marriages as well, where our spouses, Pastor Allan is the way he is because of his upbringing, his life, what he's been through. I'm the way that I am. Like, for me, if he said to me, you're overreacting, to me those are fighting words.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Overreacting?
yeah, like, I'll show you overreacting. But that's because, if you've grown up in an environment, where you were not allowed to express yourself, or maybe you were constantly criticized, you're going to react to those things. And it comes from something that's within that God's still working in. So we have learned to kind of look inside of each other and appreciate those differences and realize that Claudina is not like somebody else. I am not maybe, so I have a friend that said to me, you're hard on the outside, but you're soft on the inside. And I love that, because some people are soft on the outside and hard on the inside. And only those that are close to them get to see that part of who they are. It's not wrong, just different.
and I'm the opposite. I'm hard on the outside and soft on the
Well, that's
inside.
what I'm saying.
I'm like a candy bar.
I've been told that I look scary.
I'm chock full of nuts. And let me use myself as an example, because, and I am, and I mean, most of you know me long enough, and most probably come into come into contact with other people and stuff like that. I'm not your typical pastor. I know, somebody's like, oh my God, I know. Right? I pray about that all the time. I'm not your typical pastor, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way, because some people are pastors to certain types of people. Some pastors they can minister differently to people, and that's cool, you know. And the way that I look at it is, some of you may have had an incident or a conversation with me, and it may seem, I may seem insensitive, or I may seem like I don't cover things with sugar and rainbows and puppy dog tails and everything. I'm straight to the point. Yeah. You know, you're a big boy, I'm a big boy, or you're a big girl, and I'm a big girl. If I have to candy coat it or something like that, what's that? What's that?
You're a big girl too?
You just said you were a big girl.
Don't judge me. But the thing is that, you know, I want to be able to, you know, there's no reason, I don't believe in candy coating things. I don't believe in sugar coating things. I want to tell you something in love, but I'm going to tell you the truth. If you come to me and ask my opinion about something, I'm like, well, you know, it's like, you ask my opinion. You know, if you ask me to get involved in something, be prepared for me to get involved in something. If you ask for my opinion about something, be prepared for my opinion. It's my opinion, you know.
And I'm married to you.
Yes, and she still stays with me, you know. But that's just me. Don't you wish that people could accept you for who you are? Don't you want to be the same person that you are when you're walking down the hall of the church as you are outside? Yes. That you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, how is it that I act with that person, and how is it that I have to act with this person? No, this is all me, baby. Okay? And I mean that, I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean that in a good way.
And you know, that's important here, because when we get saved, we expect, you know, there are certain expectations that people have of their spouses, and you can destroy and devastate your marriage by saying things to your spouse like, well, you know, that wasn't godly in Scripture. You know, you can really beat up your spouse and where they're at in their walk with the Lord if you have a judgmental spirit, you know, and you're being hard on them for who they are and their personality, when in all reality there's no wickedness behind that. And we need to be careful. And that was a challenge for Pastor Allan and I got saved first. I became very religious. And I had to adjust me so that I can allow the Lord to work in him. And I had to respect what God was doing in his life. And that there's a lot of conflict in marriages that arise even in Christian households because they feel like they're at different levels. I've heard people say, we're unequally yoked. No, you're both believers. You each have your own journey. You each are accountable to do something different together, but yet different. So we need to be careful that we don't put our expectations or where you're at in the Lord on your spouse to where it causes conflict and you're not reflecting the glory of Christ through your marriage. We need to use a lot of wisdom when it comes to that and just accept that God is working on your spouse and they need to accept that he's working on you and come together and make it work.
That's good. All right, let's go back to the video.
To make this whole process a little bit more personal, let's go back to those social styles, the 4 social styles, and kind of lift out what is it that we need to know if we're in one particular style.
Well, for me, I'm a sympathizer. I tend to dwell in the heart. I'm all about the feelings. I am so locked into that I'm going to have very different obstacles to this than you are when it comes to trying to do this one.
You're just going to have less objectivity, perhaps, than somebody else might.
Yeah, I need a heavy dose of that sound judgment so I can accurately understand you. But, you know, I'm going to be great at describing feelings. That is what I'm good at.
So, and that's the case for the sympathizer. I'm going to analyze, right, fall into that social style. And so for me, I have to lean into those feelings better to understand what your experience is.
Yeah, I mean, that is one gift of being a sympathizer. We have lots of words to describe our emotions.
Yeah, whenever we speak to a group at a kind of a seminar or a conference, we'll often say, you know, we know that half of you have more feeling words in your vocabulary than the other half, and you don't have to guess which gender it is. Women do. We know this from research. It's not a sexist statement. We know that women have more feeling words.
Yeah, of course.
And so it can be somewhat challenging for men to identify their feelings because they, relative to men, you know, you ask most men, what are you feeling? You get a response like, well, I'm not hungry, I'm okay, you know. Little exaggeration, but women are like a walking thesaurus of emotions,
Yes,
research tells us. And again, I just want to remind you, as iron sharpens iron, we help each other in this process. It's not that one way is better than the other. We need both wings of the airplane to take empathy and get it flying.
I mean, the truth is we all have obstacles when it comes to focusing in, tuning into that emotional wavelength. That's what this is all about, creating that radar, that ability.
You know, when you turn on your emotional radar and really tune into your spouse's emotions, you begin to read them like a book. I mean, that's what this is all about. And your spouse, maybe for the first time in a long time, will go, wow, I feel so understood, right?
Oh, it's amazing. And I'll tell you when it's really amazing is when it happens in the midst of one of those tough moments in life, and it really helps you spiral out of what would have been a bad conflict if you hadn't tuned in to that radar.
What's an example?
You know, I remember recently we were on a flight, and it had been a hectic morning, early flight. I was exhausted. By the time I buckled in, this was my time to relax.
That's right. And you were reading a magazine, right?
I had been saving for that moment, you know? So as I'm reading it, I'm starting to get aware that you're paying attention to me, and you begin to ask me, oh, what are you doing there? So you're reading that magazine. And I'm starting to think, what is up with this? Finally, you said, okay, you know, I brought the manuscript along.
You were reading the magazine when I felt like you should have been working on this manuscript that we had due.
Precisely.
I knew that you weren't going to be able to work on the way back.
I'd be too tired. You explained to me very well that I would be too tired.
This was your window.
This was my window. And I felt myself getting so defensive. I was ready to launch into this whole thing about I didn't get any sleep. I don't have, you know, even the resources to do this well. This is my time. How could you demand it? And all of a sudden it hit me. This isn't about me. I tuned into your wavelength. I can't even describe why. Maybe it was God's spirit really moving in me. And I just thought to myself, you know, he's feeling anxious. This deadline, you know, is important to him. He's an analyzer. He's analyzed the situation that's created anxiety. And I just said to you in that moment, this is all about your urgency with this deadline. You know, and it hit you that, yeah.
Because that's a primary need that I have. And we all have these fundamental needs if we can help our spouse identify them.
That created, every one of us gets anxious for different reasons.
And it was interesting because when you did that, it was like instant empathy for me. Because I know that you could have very easily said, wait a second, man, do you have any idea what it took to get on this airplane?
And I wanted to. I mean, I could, you know, already feel the emotions bubbling.
Right. I had to get the babysitter, and I had to get the kids off to school, and whatever it was. And instead, you reflected back what my experience was. You
and I saw an instant change in your countenance. It was pretty fast. And then you were able to do the same for me.
Yeah, and I backed off. I didn't start bugging you anymore about the
you know, you said you're probably feeling like I'm not affirming you right now because it's your time. And I said, yeah. And of course, I had the inner reserves to work on.
So friends, that's what turning on your emotional radar is all about. It diffuses in an instant those tough situations. So I notice you, skill number 1, and I feel with you is skill number 2. These are the 2 steps that we talked about last session and this session.
It's so powerful. I mean, I just can't even emphasize enough the power that happens when you really get that your spouse took the time to feel with you in that, you know, in that situation.
Yeah, and don't get discouraged. If you're trying to identify your spouse's feelings and you're thinking, oh, maybe that's not right, or, oh, I don't want to say it because what is, no, forget that. Here's the cool thing on this. You can be dead wrong when you're identifying your spouse's feelings. Dead wrong. And this will still work as long as you're genuine. Now, if you're just doing this as a technique, as a strategy, but your heart's not really in it, forget about it, especially as an analyzer. If you're trying to just, hey, I'm doing what that couple said to do in the video, why are you upset? That'll never work. You got to have a genuine heart.
But as long as you're genuine, I mean, if you say to me, "Oh, it sounds like you're really angry about that," I'll go, well, "No, I'm not really angry. I think I'm sad." You know, it doesn't shut me down. I don't feel offended that you didn't get it the first time. I'm glad to share and help you get it. You know?
You'll clarify it for me.
Exactly.
Right? So, well, that's it. So try this out. As you're turning on your emotional radar, don't be afraid to put a feeling out there and just make sure your heart's in it. You do this, you're well on your way to creating empathy because you've done the first step, which is saying,
I notice you.
and now you're ready for that second step, which is, I feel with you. When you've done that, you've now opened up the double doors to enjoy empathy. In our next session, we're going to take you one step further in this 3-step process and talk about the final one.
All right. How many of you have ever said to somebody, I feel you? All the time. But do you really understand the meaning behind what you're saying? And do you really feel them? You know? Can you really, because feeling them, I think the intent of that comment is, I feel you, means I empathize with you. I can actually put myself in your situation and I understand what you're going through and I feel for you one way or the other. And I say that, I find myself saying that, you know, because that's just the way I talk, you know, it's like, I'll tell somebody, I feel you, you know, and it's like, what? But I do, and I consider myself to be an extremely sensitive person. I know you're like, no, really? No, really, I have feelings, and I can understand, and so when I say I feel you, somebody, I feel their hurt, I feel their pain, I feel, you know, their anxiety, whatever the case may be, because I've experienced all of those things myself. Were you say something?
I was going to say, when you tell somebody I feel you, it doesn't mean that you agree with them or that they're right.
No.
It just means that you understand why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And sometimes they are justified, but as a friend or as your spouse, you know, to feel my heart, there have been times that you feel me, but then later you find the right moment to kind of help me see the bigger picture, because I may be tunnel vision or looking at something not quite the right way. Then when we start exploring the whole situation, I realized that maybe I did overreact. But you didn't say you overreacted, which, you know.
I'm scared of you. Yes.
I have a really hard time saying I feel what you're feeling if I haven't gone through what that person is
Right,
going
it makes it very hard to empathize.
Yeah, so I say I understand because I see what's going on, but I just don't say I feel because I feel like I'm not feeling that.
Right.
So,
And being able to learn how to put yourself in somebody else's shoes may help you to try to understand that. Again, if you haven't experienced that emotion or whatever the case may be, it may be hard, but learning to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes is the first step to being able to empathize with their situation or what they're feeling or whatever the case may be. So it does help. Yes, ma'am?
I think for myself, it's like going to Magic Mountain and being on every ride. You know, when someone's talking to you and whether that's Wayne or a friend, it's like, I'm really like, I feel you because I've really been there with that emotion and that feeling, you know. And a lot of the times, Wayne will tell me the same thing that Kadina said. He'll say, I feel you. And then later he'll come to me and be like, you know, they get to do this or whatever it is that, you know, I'm feeling of whatever it's about. And he'll kind of like analyze it for me sometimes. He's right. Sometimes.
Right. It couldn't possibly be all the time. It's just sometimes.
But yes, but he analyzed it because sometimes we do have those same emotions, those same like 0 to 60 second, you know, feelings that you get. But a lot of times, you know, we'll be thinking the same reaction, but sometimes he's just a little bit more level-headed and we'll be able to direct me better.
And there's a lot of wisdom that comes from people that are not experiencing the same emotion that you are right now. How many times have you felt an emotion, whether it was anger or resentment or hurt, and you make a rash decision about something, and later on you find that, well, maybe I shouldn't have made that decision at that particular moment because we act out of emotion.
Yeah.
And before you make any kind of a decision, you have to maybe get counsel from somebody else, even in the smallest of things.
Yes.
You know, I mean, because you may come to a decision, you may get upset about something, and you say, you know what, I'm just not going to talk to that person anymore. And you don't understand the gist of the whole thing. Sometimes we're very narrow-minded. It's kind of like those horses that have blinders on. You can only see directly in front of you, and you need to be able to see the whole picture. But if you thought about it, give me an example of a situation where you would have the most difficulty decoding the emotional radar signals. What kind of situations make it hard for you to decode those kinds of signals? I know, you have to think about it. The first thing that comes to my mind is when you're having an argument. Because when you're having an argument, the last thing you're thinking about is how the other person feels. You're thinking about how you feel, what you're standing up for, how you've been trampled on, how you're upset over something. It has nothing to do with the other person right now. It's all about you. And how important it is for you to justify the way that you feel and make the other person feel like they're wrong so that you win.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Is there another situation? Or is that the only one?
Say the question again.
What kind of a situation gives you the most difficulty in decoding emotional radar signals?
Body language.
Body language makes it hard for you?
I think when you're tired physically,
Physically tired?
yeah, it's
Okay.
hard to read the other person.
That's good.
For me, it's been when I'm trying to talk and you're not trying to work on a situation with me. It'd be really hard to try and get past that so that we can have some good outcome.
Okay.
Sometimes what we say that, bring us with other level of the situation, instead of making things better, it gets things bigger.
Okay.
When we think we know, we're right.
When we think we know we're right. That's good. How about when somebody else doesn't even let you finish your sentence? Does that kind of make it hard to decode the emotional signals? Because all it's doing is, it's kind of like what Martha was saying. It's, you keep going to the next level because all it's doing is infuriating you more and more. Because, it's like, can I just tell you can you just shut up and listen to me? So, sometimes don't you get to that point? Right? It's like, would you please just shut up? Can I please talk? Okay. I forgot to throw that one in before. Shut up. And you don't ever, I'm not encouraging you to say shut up. Okay? And for all of those of you out in internet land, I'm not encouraging you to say shut up. But you get to that point of frustration where it's like, my God, what do I have to do to get you to let me express the way that I feel without talking? I can remember lessons that we've gone through that, look, you have the emotional spotlight. What's so funny? Are you living out your own life? Yes. Okay. The reality makes you laugh. The thing is that when you are discussing something, and I use the word discussing very carefully, when you're having a discussion, a heated, passionate discussion, okay, you have to remember spotlight. Okay? When someone's talking, the spotlight's on them. Period. Just shut up. Don't say a word until they are finished. And when they're finished doesn't mean when they take a breath. I just really need to tell you, are you done?
Yes.
Okay? That's not what it is. You need to let them, and then you ask them, okay, have you explained everything? Can I give you my point of view on it? If you can learn to take turns in the spotlight, that is playing fair. Right? Because each person deserves to be able to express how they feel. What do you have, Mike?
I cut her off all the time because I'm halfway through that conversation. I forget what the first thing was, the second thing was.
Wow.
All right. So here's, let me, you
I
just
second
touched-
that.
I mean, there's so many men that are going, oh my God, I feel you. What I would suggest, in all seriousness, I'm not even playing, get a piece of paper and a pencil. You know? No, really, because if you want to, because if ladies, and I'm not directing this at you, Jen, but if the shoe fits, Cinderella, all I'm saying is, and I have to be careful because she plays my wife in the play, and I don't want her like pushing me down the steps to have or anything like that. So, yeah, say, oh, it's you. You're tripping and going to hell. So, but here's the thing: is I don't want to minimize the importance of the fact of when you're having a discussion, it's important to remember everything that's being said. If you're inundating the other person with, if it's just one of those sessions, okay? Yeah, blank session, okay? That you're sitting down and you're airing all of your disappointments, and you have more than one of them, then if you want it to really be discussed, then maybe, I know it sounds horrible. It's like, okay, here's my grievances, here's my list, let's go through them one by one. Okay, you want to do this before dinner or before dessert? Which one? I'm going to throw up either way, so it doesn't really matter whether you do it now or later. But, in all fairness, it's hard to have a discussion when you're coming with a bunch of stuff, because then the other person feels like, okay, is there anything that I'm doing right? Or, all you're doing is concentrating on these, this top 10 list of things that Allan does wrong. I don't know. Did you have a comment, Marvin?
Oh, I was thinking out loud.
Oh, don't do that. Other people will hear you. Oh, Eric had her hand up.
Well, that's why last week we learned the whole, basically checking your attitude and checking your motives and realizing where you're coming from, because that's a lot of the time, for myself, I still have a lot of growing up to do, but that's exactly what, that lesson we did last week helped me so much, because a lot of times I have to remember where am I coming from, because a lot of times I'm on full force mode, anytime, and a lot of times I have to back myself up and be like, well, what is my motive for this, and why am I so aggressively wanting to get it across?
And that's why, there's so much, I know, when you become a Christian, it's like, well, you got to listen to Air One, listen to, there's a lot of validity to the worldly music, check yourself before you wreck yourself, there's a lot of wisdom in that, seriously, you need to be able to check yourself before you go into something, and check your attitude, check your emotion. You need to keep yourself in check, because the last thing you want is somebody else keeping you in check.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Because nobody likes to be corrected. Right? What? Oh, you're going to come out and point out my fallacies. You're going to tell me what I do wrong. Where's the people that come up to you and go, you do that right, you do that right, you do that right, you do that right, you do that right. No. That doesn't happen. It's when let's go back to the 3rd and 4th grade when they put smiley faces on your paper and stars and all that when you did something right. Right? Positive reinforcement. How come we didn't carry that into our adult life? How come we didn't, not that I'm going to put stars and happy faces on your worksheets, okay? But how come we're not, even as Christians, we're called to be encouragers.
Yes.
And a lot of times when you encourage somebody, it sounds like BS. Because it's just the right thing to do, And you say it in such a spiritually covered way that it doesn't even sound like it's from the heart. Well, most of you are crazy, but that's not that. That's a whole other lesson for another day,
I think the goal is to learn who your spouse is. Get to learn your spouse's personality, how they think, how they respond, how they react, because that's the person you're married to. So, there are some conversations that this other Christian couple can have that maybe don't work for us. And that's whereas Pastor Allan and I, we're very direct. We don't like to sugarcoat things. I don't have time life is too short. So let's just talk about it. Let's discuss it like two intelligent adults. Let's put the things on the table. Let's agree to disagree, but let's agree to make our marriage work. Let's agree to make this thing happen and be happy. And that's where we're at. And we didn't get here overnight. We had to learn in our early days how to do this dance of marriage, because really we learned very quickly that we had to compromise. That Claudina wasn't going to get her way all the time, and he wasn't going to get his way all the time either. We had to meet somewhere in the middle, and I really value the fact that he's a reasonable man. I believe I'm reasonable sometimes. But that's a good quality to have, and that's a good thing to ask the Lord. Father, God, help me be reasonable. Help me be a reasonable person, because if you are not reasonable, and that's something I tell my daughter, you know, when she's dating, you know, one day she's going to get married, ensure that he's a reasonable human being, because that's going to be important in marriage.
Yep. So how valuable do you think it is to better able read your partner's emotions? Do you think it's valuable?
Yeah.
You better believe that it's valuable. You know, I know some emotions are, you can't get it wrong. If they give you a look like they, you know, if they had a knife close, that you know, then there's no mistaking that. But there are emotions that may not take place just because of a facial feature or something that you need to be aware of. And now if you think about your emotional style, is there kind of challenges that you face in picking up emotional signals from your spouse if you're an analyzer? You know, when it came to, how many of you wound up taking that test online? Okay, we're going to pray for the rest of you. I find myself to be, you know, I never like to be labeled in one particular area. I'm just not, you can't label me, okay? I'm a little bit of everything. I'm an analyzer, I'm a personalizer, you know, I'm just one of those people that I want to analyze everything. And I do take things personally. And I am emotional, so I'm an emotionalizer. I'm all of those things. And so your emotional style, when you have emotional signals from your spouse, if you're an analyzer, then all of a sudden you analyze those things and you become a personalizer. Because you're the reason that they're unhappy. So now you take it upon yourself, like, oh my gosh, I'm just such a screw up. I can't do anything right. I can't make them happy. I can't make me happy. I can't. And so we tend to put all this weight on our shoulders. You know? And then we condemn ourselves and we come down on ourselves. And that's just not the way that God intended it to be. Listen, whatever you are, and all of you are something, okay?
Thank you.
I mean that in the most loving, spiritual kind of way that I could possibly even. But what you are, wherever you lack, whatever it is, God's grace is sufficient.
That's right.
Okay? And if you can remember nothing else from today, remember that God's grace is sufficient. Bottom line is regardless of everything, He died on the cross for your sins. He died on the cross for your iniquity. He bore stripes for your sins, and through His stripes you are healed.
Amen.
So it doesn't matter who you were. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter where you are today, because we're all still a work in progress. Even me. I know it seems like I'm already there. How dare you laugh at me? But as we're walking in our walk to be better, His grace is enough. And don't beat yourself up. You are all that. You're just looking for the bag of chips. So keep walking and understand that His grace is enough. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So do you think that it's important that you feel I'm sorry, let me rephrase the question. How important do you feel that it is better to read your mate's emotions. Don't you think it's important? Right? And if you improved in this area, do you think that it would improve your marriage?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay. Any of you ever felt abandoned by God, or that he simply wasn't concerned about you anymore? Anybody? I can raise my hand. I usually feel it on Wednesdays.
Wow.
But if you haven't, if you have felt it, it's very real. What God said about his people, even when they were in a place of extreme disobedience to him, listen to this verse, and what does it say to you about God making time to notice you? You have the scripture, it's Isaiah 49:14. It says, Zion says, the Lord's abandoned me, the Lord's forgotten me. Can a woman forget her nursing child? Or lack compassion for the child of her womb? Even if these forget, yet I will not forget you. Look, I've inscribed you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are continually before me, and I know it's not exactly how you have it in your paper, but I'll make sure to read your ones next. The thing is that we want to improve our emotional radar. We can't start by recognizing that we are never off of God's radar screen. If he's all-powerful, all-seeing, which he is, he knows exactly what's going on with each and every one of us at all times. He is that cool that he can do that. Okay? If you look at Psalm 139, it says, O Lord, you search me and know me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down. You're acquainted with all my ways, for there is not a word on my tongue. But behold, O Lord, you know it all together. You've hedged me behind and before, and laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, and I can't attain it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. If I take the wings in the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light about me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. And 2 Samuel 6:16 says, now as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through a window and saw King David leaping and whirling before the Lord. She despised him in her heart. When we strive to improve our emotional radar, we're actually copying the quality of God, because he pays incredible attention to us. In the story of King David and his wife Michal, look for the ways that they demonstrated effective emotional radar, or the lack of it. Look at 2 Samuel 6:16. We read that. No, we didn't. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Okay. Look, I'm sorry. Let me put the story of David and Michal into a modern marriage, and then we'll look at ways to understand the partner's emotional state. Let's see, Rita. She was an only child. She grew up in a home where she felt cherished by a mom and a dad who went out of their way to take care of her. They were continually looking after Rita and each other. So when Rita married Vince, the middle child in a family with several siblings, she made the erroneous assumption so many people make in a marriage, and that was, what's good for me is good for you. She cared for Vince the way that she wanted to be cared for. She brought him snacks, for example, whether he was hungry or not. She saw this as an act of kindness, and he saw it as a waste of food. She would set out a clean shirt for him to wear in the morning. She saw this as being thoughtful. He saw it as being smothered. It was all too much for him. So much caring became downright irritating to him. And she had no idea why he was often annoyed. She thought that she was helping, when in truth she was only making matters worse. It's nothing personal. He simply feels smothered by too much caring. What's the point? Well, she's never going to succeed in loving him until she first puts herself in his shoes. not only with her heart, but with her head as well. And the same is true for him doing it for her. So, if you think on that story, how is her past experiences and her own relationship style causing her to relate to Vince in a less than helpful way? Come on, y'all. Yes, sir.
Well, she's not picking up on his feelings, but he's also not expressing those feelings over, so it's kind of an expectation situation.
That's good. And she's acting the way that her parents treated her, and she brought that into the relationship. But that's not him. She's doing what she knew best. How many of you can actually say that, you watched your mom and dad grow up, good, bad, or indifferent, and those are the things that you started instilling into your relationship, and then you've had to alter them as time goes on, because you're finding out that that may not necessarily be the way that it is. That worked for your mom or dad, or maybe it didn't work for your mom or dad, but that's what you saw, that's what you emulate, that's what you try to do, and you have to find the right balance between you and your wife. Your wife bringing you a clean shirt every day, man, some guys are just like, no, the one I'm wearing is on the floor. I wore it yesterday, it's still clean, I'll pick it up, And you just got to be okay with that, Unless it's fuchila, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it, because a good shake and some clean deodorant will take care of the problem. So,
The Puerto Rican shower.
now, if Rita was able to empathize with her husband, what would that lead her to do differently?
Just start asking him, honey, what would you like?
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Wow, wait a second, you're talking about communicating?
Yeah. Men are real simple.
I think women would argue that point.
Yes.
Because they put too much thought in it, and they don't realize it. It's an argument that's going on and on. I know, Sonia.
Okay.
Let me just say this. We're going on 19 years. If I ask that question, can anybody guess what the answer would be? You've been with me this long and you don't know? If he comes in, if he does, you can ask him. He'll tell you. He'll tell me, let's order Chinese. Okay, what do you want? You should know what I want. We've been together for how long now? And that right there does not end well. It doesn't. Because then he comes in with no food.
We will jump.
So asking him is not always going to work. Maybe it works for you guys, but it doesn't work for somebody.
No, but I think, okay, hold on, here's the mediator. Okay. Y'all are, hold on, back to your corners. Okay. The thing is that, okay, so the thing that I would say is, we're talking about Rita and her husband here, not Sonia and Ozzy, and we're not talking about it. But the point is that if she empathized with her husband, what could she do differently? The communication aspect is correct. Is it simple? Sometimes no. If my wife and I have been married almost as long as you guys have, we're going on 19 years, okay? But the fact still remains, if she said, I'm going to Panda Express, what do you want? And I would say nothing because I don't feel like Panda Express, okay? But even if she said, what do you want from Panda Express? Man, I ain't going to have the same answer every time. I'm not going to, whether it's 18 years now, if I go for Italian food, she knows what I want, period, okay? Pretty much given. But I don't think that there's any simple, you should know after 18 years. You should know what color the other person's eyes are after 18 years. But I don't think, necessarily when it comes to food or doing something like that, there is no given. And I understand that. So, and if you said, we're going to jump them in the parking lot. Yeah. Yes.
No, but I think it's a combination of the two, though. Because the question is, are you hungry? Yeah, I am. What do you want to eat? For me,
down because Maria comes with cottage cheese and fruit, and you're like, what is this?
I'll eat it.
Oh, well, you're a better man than me. Okay.
I'll eat it. I'm not gonna be happy about it, but I'll eat it. If that's what's on the, I was raised, and I have 5 siblings. So I have 5 siblings. So when my mom made dinner, that's what was for dinner. So I didn't. My mom's biggest thing was, it was like, I don't want to eat this. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you get a menu when you walked in? No. Just ate a restaurant.
No, that's good. That's good.
So for me, that's my mentality.
And that's your past bringing into your. So everybody's situation is
so
different.
For me, it's a combination.
But I think that's great. Yes, Mr. Robles.
You know, Kelly said something interesting when she spoke a couple of Wednesdays ago. She said that the Lord never defended himself. And I thought about that for a long time. And I came to realize that we're taught to defend ourselves from little kids. Don't let him talk to you. Don't let her talk. Don't let him push you around like that. Stand up, all this stuff. So when we get big, man, I'm not going to let her talk to me like that. We defend it. And I realized that I constantly defend myself, and I got to undo. And she really brought that out. For us to emulate the Lord is to not defend. And that's all this stuff. We defend ourselves. Constantly.
And we'll just wrap it up with that. All right. So,
I've heard and I've met guys that my wife had, and I've asked them, I said, well, how did you get to that point? Well, she used to do this for me and this and that, and now she doesn't do it. You know, and why? Well, because I used to tell her, hey, you know, like you say, she's mothering me. So some women don't know how to communicate, you know, to the feelings of the guys. They just come into a relationship how mom and dad used to be, just like you described it. And I've seen that over and over and over again. And a lot of guys that start rejecting or complaining about the wife, I said, well, dude, you let her get to that stage. You should have stopped it, you know, when it was starting to get to you. Don't, you know, you should never let anything go on, and then one day blow up, and when the person never knew what's going on in between then and now. You know, so we gotta be careful. I mean, I've been married for 33 years, okay, and my wife, she irons my clothes when I ask her about anything. Sometimes she knows what I want, and she'll iron it because she already knows, but I don't expect her to do it. Why? Because I grew up with a dad that was a male chauvinist, and to this day he's still fighting with that. 77 years old, and it's sad, you know. And us as guys, we need to recognize that if we come from a background like that, we need to change things. We cannot continue the vicious cycle. We become Christians, we got to change. We got to remember that what God expects from us is the best. Sometimes we like to argue for the sake of argument, you know. Just like Frank was saying, you know, you want to defend yourself, and nobody wants to give up. Well, somebody has to. You know? Thank you.
good.
I think about the scripture about speaking the truth in love. When we are having a conversation with our spouse, we need to make sure that there is love there. Because the goal is to build, not to tear down. The goal is to grow and to increase, not to decrease. So keep that in mind, that your spouse is your partner. Your spouse is a gift from God. You were created to help each other grow and mature in this walk and be a blessing and represent who He is, who God is through our marriage. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that the motivation behind it is not about winning, and it's not evil, and it's not about tearing down.
Good. All right, yes.